He arrived at dusk, when the forest sky takes on that hue between blood and ash. He brought no luggage, just a heavy coat, dirty boots, and a look in his eyes that showed he no longer expected anything from life. He didn't say his name when the old man in the cabin asked. He didn't explain why when he silently paid to stay on the farthest trail, close to the tree line. He only wanted one thing: to disappear. Disappear, as if it never existed. In the following days, he did everything he could to erase himself. He hid documents under a rock on the riverbank. He threw photos into the fire. He walked along dry riverbeds so as not to leave any traces. He wore gloves, avoided speaking loudly, and never left the light on at night. It seemed like he had studied his own disappearance. But there was one detail he didn't know. The forest has guardians, and in that isolated, cold region, surrounded by fog and silence, they walk on 4 legs, amber eyes, shadowed fur. They feel what the world ignores. On the 3rd night, he heard. It wasn't the howl of a hungry wolf. It was a long call, as if a truth was being brought to light. He came out of the cabin with a flashlight. He didn't see anyone, but something was watching him. Something that knew he was lying, because no matter how much you erase a footprint, the smell of lies still hangs in the air. And the wolves, they were getting closer. Have you ever tried to bury something from the past, and nature itself refused to forget? Keep watching. The truth will emerge, and it howls in the night. On the 4th night, the temperature dropped more than usual. The man woke with his bones aching and his breath forming thick clouds in the darkness of the cabin. The fire had gone out, but the cold wasn't what bothered me the most. He had a dream, or thought he did. In it, a white trail opened between the trees, and at the end of it, a wolf stood still, motionless, looking into it. The eyes did not accuse. They did not forgive. They just knew. Upon waking, the man found himself with trembling fingers and a sweaty forehead. I tried to rationalize. A dream is just a dream. But the silence of the forest was different. It was not the natural silence of an isolated dawn. It was a vacuum, as if the whole world held its breath. He left the cabin putting on his coat. He had a flashlight, but it didn't turn on. I didn't want to see, and maybe I didn't want to be seen. The snow crunched under their feet, but after a few steps, he stopped. There, right at the edge of the trail, were footprints, but not human. Large, deep, precisely designed. Of a wolf. And even more strangely, they weren't going. They were coming back, as if something had followed his trail and returned. The man swallowed hard. It wasn't just any animal. It was no coincidence. The forest seemed to have marked him, and at that moment, something moved in the shadows. It was then that he heard it, a howl. But it wasn't lonely. It was a collective lament, coming from all directions. Long, serious, full of memory. The wolves did not howl out of hunger. They howled in remembrance, for something that had been denied, something someone had tried to erase. The man fell to his knees. He felt the sounds reverberating in his chest, as if each note were an ancient question, one he knew the answer to, but refused to admit. The snow began to fall slowly, thick, silent, and what was just a howl became a presence. At the edge of the trail, between twisted branches, eyes began to appear, fixed, luminous. No rush. The wolves did not attack him. They just watched, as if they were waiting for him to remember. Because no matter how hard you try to cover your tracks, if you lied to the forest, she's going to send the wolves, and they always know where to look. The man did not know how long he knelt in that thick snow. Everything around seemed suspended. No wind, no sound, no movement. The forest watched him, When he finally got up,
were still
the
there.
eyes, green, fixed, but they didn't move forward. They didn't need to. They had already marked their territory, or maybe your memory. Back at the cabin, he locked the doors and hid like a wounded animal. For hours he sat on the floor, his eyes fixed on the cracks in the wood, waiting for something to enter. But nothing came, not even sleep. And when morning came, bringing a timid beam of light through the window, he thought of running away. Leave. Go down the trail and disappear. Between roads, cars, and towns where the wolves wouldn't follow. But when I opened the door, the plan died there. The footprints, the ones he had erased, the ones he never wanted anyone to find, they were back. Not in the usual way. No recent traces of anyone passing by. But old marks. Faded, as if time had returned what he tried to bury. They left the cabin and walked along the trail to an old fallen oak tree. The same place where he, years ago, had done what he swore he would never tell. He staggered over, his heart beating like a war drum, and upon arrival, he found the earth turned over. Not by tools, not because of rain, but by claws. It was as if something had dug there overnight, following not logic, but instinct. At the edge of the hole, wolf tracks circled like a ritual. One of them, the largest, had lain down on that spot, leaving a clear, heavy mark in the center. He fell to his knees again, but now facing the past. The lie, once covered by snow, leaves, and time, now exposed. Cold. Raw. On the side of the trunk, where he never looked after that day, there was something engraved. 2 initials. Together. With a heart around it. The man sobbed, and for the first time the sound of the forest responded. Not with howls, but with an even deeper silence. A heavy respect, as if the wolves had said, "Now you remember." And there, with his hands in the snow, he understood. The forest does not seek revenge. Wolves do not punish. They just give it back. The truth. Even if it's the darkest path. Even if it drags you through the coldest nights. Even if you have to smell the lie until you find its source. From that day on, he never left the forest. But not as a fugitive. No more. Now he walked slowly, silently, with his eyes open. I watched the trails. I heard the branches. I could smell the smells. As if learning a new language, or remembering one you'd already forgotten. The wolves no longer followed him, but their traces appeared constantly, like little notes, left at every bend in the road. And the more he followed, the more the images came back. That night, the muffled scream, the broken promise, the oath made in haste before a body too fragile for the violence of a world like that. He met her in that forest. She made him laugh. She knew the name of every tree, of every constellation that rose above the bare branches. She said that wolves were not monsters, and yes, witnesses. They kept the echoes. They were the eyes of the earth. When she disappeared, he tried to forget. Or maybe he wanted to pretend nothing had happened. He dug somewhere, and there he buried what was left. Of her, of himself, of love. He thought that time would erase everything. But now I understood. It wasn't time that brought that back. He was she, or what was left of it. In the wind, in the snow, in the wolf that lay on the lie. That night he walked to the tree again, but this time not to cry, to listen. The full moon rose between the branches, casting shadows that danced on the snow. And then, like a whisper between the teeth of the night, he heard a call, feminine, low, painful, but present. He closed his eyes and let the sound in, as if it were part of an old ritual. When he opened his eyes, there were no more footprints in front of him. The snow was virgin, untouched, but behind him, wolf tracks appeared one by one, alone, nobody, no animal, as if something invisible was walking beside him, or inside it. And he finally understood what the wolves wanted to show from the beginning. The forest does not demand blood, it requires memory. And every time someone tries to erase what they lived, she sends her guardians to dig up, to remember, to guide. Because as long as there is snow, there will always be footprints. And as long as there are lies, wolves will always smell it. On the seventh night, the forest was completely silent. There was no wind, no crows, no leaves moving. Even the wolves fell silent. But the man felt inside something was coming. He returned to the fallen oak tree for the last time. It was different, not by time, but by the weight of truth finally accepted. The earth, which had once swallowed him, now seemed to breathe. And in the center of the old hole, where before there was only pain and guilt, white flowers were blooming, even in the snow, flowers that choose to harvest. The man knelt before them, not as someone defeated, but as someone who finally understood. He murmured her name, just once, and for the first time, he wasn't afraid to say it. It was at that moment that the wolves came. They did not emerge from the darkness. They did not break the silence with howls. They simply appeared, as if they had always been there, waiting for him to be able to truly see them. There were 5, black, white, gray. One of them had golden eyes, like hers. They sat in a circle, as guardians, as witnesses to an ancient and silent ritual. The man looked at them. Then he looked at the sky. The moon was immense, full, and for a brief moment he saw the reflection of a face in the glitter of the snow, hers, smiling. He closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. And when he let out his breath, the sound that came out of his mouth wasn't a cry, not a scream, era a howl, low, hoarse, human, ancestral. The wolves followed him, one by one, until the whole forest vibrated with the sound of truth being set free. Because sometimes, forgiveness doesn't come with words, comes with delivery. And that night, under a full moon, a man who tried to erase his history was finally remembered, not by guilt, but for the love he tried to hide. The snow covered him like a cloak. The wolves disappeared with the wind, but the flowers remained. And if you ever pass by that forgotten trail, maybe I still hear, not the steps, but the call, because the truth also howls. If this story touched you, if something inside echoed in that silence between the howls, then you are part of the pack. Subscribe to the channel and walk with us where footprints never disappear.